Spectre was released in 2015, directed by Sam Mendes and stars Daniel Craig as James Bond, his fourth uh, portrayal in the role. And this was the last James Bond film uh, which thus far has been released. Of course, No Time to Die was scheduled to be released earlier in 2020. It's of course been indefinitely delayed. Who knows when we might see it? But I wanted to give this one a review today because it's a very it's a very mixed bag of a film. It's when I saw this at the cinema, the experience I had and the experience that I think most people had, definitely that I've spoken to just in general, were disappointed by it. It felt like a big step down in not so much quality but just entertainment value, um, from Skyfall, which came out in 2012. So I mean, Skyfall was a great James Bond film. It's one of those ones that if it's on television, I'll watch it and it gets my full undivided attention. I thought it was excellent. I thought it was everything that you would want from a modern James Bond film. The earlier films, Casino Royale is a great film. I do concede that, but I don't enjoy watching. I've only seen it, I think, a couple of times, and I actually find it quite depressing almost. I mean, it's it's one of those. It's a really gritty, dramatic sort of Born Identity type tone to it, which is fine and it works, but it's not fun to watch in the same way that I think Skyfall was. And then of course Quantum of Solace, I think I saw once like a decade ago. I remember very little about it. It suffered greatly as a result of the 2008 writer's strike. Apparently, like Daniel Craig was, the actor was having to do like rewrites of the script on set, which is not a good sign for a film's quality. But they course corrected. Skyfall was great, and then we landed with Spectre. Now, it's almost a bit of a mystery why this film doesn't really work. It's not a bad film. On the surface, there's a lot of talent on show with the making of this film. There are some some very very good elements to it. It's more so the film overall. It's more so holistically that it doesn't really work. And I had to think about it because it isn't obvious what the problems are. And I had to. I watched it again. I tried to look a bit more in depth to it, and I think I've come up with what, in my view, are the issues with the film. But I'll start first by saying what works in the film because, as I said, it's jarring almost because there's a lot in the film that's really really good, really top quality. Um, the action scenes, sort of disparate as they may be, are all fantastically choreographed. They're very very nice to watch. There's the car chase in Rome midway through the film that I understand was one of the most expensive film scenes that's ever been shot. Um, there was sort of some bare knuckle fist fights in the film that I thought worked quite well with Dave Batista, I think his name is. He was in Guardians of the Galaxy. He plays a sort of thug role in the film that's quite good. His scenes have quite a lot of presence. Um, it's without a doubt the best looking James Bond film that there's ever been in terms of direction and cinematography. I mean, that's first rate. It starts with a really excellent, a really well crafted scene at the very beginning of the film that's a one take shot that at the Day of the Dead in Mexico. Really, really well done. A really great introduction to the character. Um, the scene where Christoph Waltz's character is introduced is beautiful to look at. Very, wonderfully lit, very suspenseful. Um, in that respect, the film really shines. I mean, the director of photography deserves a lot of plaudits for this, and as does Sam Mendes as a director, because there's a lot of really clever things going on with the camera. The problems, I think, are with almost everything else in the film. So I've broken it down. I'll do it sort of bullet point style. the runtime for the film is an issue, in my view. I mean, it runs at over 2.5 hours, and it feels longer. I think it's an easy criticism to say that a film, is too long or too short, but I mean, in actual fact, you get films that are 3 hours that fly by, and you get films that are 90 minutes that feel like a labour. It really it's not the runtime itself; it's how the film is paced, and I think this film's paced quite badly. It lacks a narrative thrust. It lacks an energy to the plot that keeps you invested and keeps you wanting to see where it goes next. So I don't think the runtime itself is an issue, but I think the fact that it's paced badly is an issue. Um, so that's one thing. I didn't like the plot to this film. As I said, I thought it really lacked energy. The ending in particular, I thought was a massive anticlimax. Really, it doesn't really build to anything. I didn't feel any excitement. It's strange for a James Bond film. It's very sort of dispassionate, almost listless, just in the way that it plods on. It kind of meanders throughout the film. James Bond goes to a place, then another place, then another place, and there's occasional threats, but it's never quite consistent. You never really feel the danger. I think a lot of the cast in the film, Daniel Craig in particular, but also Léa Seydoux, who plays the love interest in the film, everyone seems like they're just going through the motions. It doesn't feel like the actors are bringing a lot to the table, and the story just doesn't really give them a lot to work with. The actors are all very stoic. I didn't really like the attempts at humour. They try and make Q, played by Ben Whishaw, they try and make him like the comic relief in the story. I don't really like that character in these films. I preferred it when, in the old James Bond films, Q was like an older guy, and he was more like a mechanic, but now they're like, it's the 2000s, we need to have a sort of computer hacker kind of guy as Q, and I get their thinking, but the character doesn't really work for me. Um, and oh, yeah, yeah, I mean, Christoph Waltz, it's sad really because I'm a big fan of his work. He's made some of the best, he's given some of the best performances, I think, of the last 10, 15 years. Um, it takes a lot to get a bad performance out of him. This film manages it. I mean, that's quite sad, really. I mean, Christoph Waltz has a lot of creativity as an actor. He can portray villains very well. But this film just doesn't really give him very much to work with. His presence, he doesn't have a lot of screen presence in the film, apart from his introduction scene, which is very good. He never really he never really carries the film, um, which is a shame. Really, it really is a shame. Um, and then there's a plot twist regarding his relationship to James Bond that I just thought was really gimmicky and really sort of unnecessary. I didn't like. Well, I think in previous films I liked that they were trying to string somewhat of a narrative through all the Daniel Craig Bond films, but in this film it felt really ham-fisted when they were making references to like Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace. I mean, who even remembers that film? I didn't have a clue who the guy was when he showed up, but the film expects you to know. Um, and yeah, the film overall, I don't think there's even that much to talk about with this film because it it's really sort of slow, really dispassionate, and just unexciting. I paused the film a few times while I was watching it because to go and do other things, and I can honestly say that most James Bond films, you don't really feel like that. You can watch them quite comfortably. They're paced well. They're exciting, um, and they have elements of humor in them that work. I mean, this didn't really work on any level for me, sadly. And I mean, there's so many. I mean, the plot is, James Bond versus the Illuminati, and quite frankly, I don't know how they managed to make it boring. I really don't. Um, but they did, and the finished product is this film. It's a shame because technically it's a marvelous film. As I said earlier, in terms of the technical aspects of the film, how it's made, but the plot, the characters, the acting, um, the editing, even it just comes across as lazy. It comes across like they were just going through the motions, and yes, I didn't really enjoy this one very much. I don't. It's not bad. It's not a bad film. It's just extremely disappointing. I'm going to give it a rating of 51 out of 100. It just gets over the 50 mark, where it's just enough to say that it's more. There's more going on there. It's more good than bad. It's passable, very passable. But to be honest, if you want a good Daniel Craig film, I would watch Skyfall any day of the week over this. I don't think I ever want to watch this again, to be honest. But I am looking forward to seeing No Time to Die when it eventually comes out. When we're past this nightmare that's been going on for the past 4 or 5 months or so. I'm excited to see it. I think Rami Malek is a good actor. Didn't like the Bohemian Rhapsody film, but yeah, he is a good actor. So I'm excited to see what he brings to the table. And yeah, I guess when I see that, I'll hopefully do a review of it. But in the meantime, I would stay clear of Spectre.